Welcome to Networking and Marketing Made Simple. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we're going to take a behind the scenes look at all things LinkedIn marketing, LinkedIn networking, and how to get what you have in front of more people. So thank you for joining me, and let's dive on in. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode, always for two reasons. Number one, I get to interview another amazing entrepreneur. And number two, it's a topic that I really am interested in talking about, not just life coaching, but holistic life coaching. And there's probably those that are listening or watching, there's probably different nuances to that. And I think everybody has a preconceived maybe expectation or vision of what life coaching is, but maybe not as clear of a picture of what holistic life coaching is. So we're going to talk about all that and more. So Christopher Larsen, welcome to today's episode.
Thanks, Scott. It's great to be here. Excited to have some conversations with you.
Awesome. And at the time that we're recording this in the pre-show, I'm glad the snow has been held off in Minnesota to date. Hopefully we didn't jinx it where, we will have some sort of nor'easter rolling into you and me. We're both affected by the Great Lakes in some way, shape, or form. So we're going to kind of continue to keep our fingers crossed and enjoy the dry weather.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, it is. It's how wintertime goes. So before we kind of get into everything that you're doing, obviously you're a doctor, you got your Ph.D, the holistic life coaching and everything else that goes into it. I always like to rewind the tape before we go forward. So if you could go back on this journey that you've been on, through your holistic life coaching, obviously, you've had different iterations of your life, an ordained minister, you've done the master in holistic life coaching, NLP, which my wife and I are completely obsessed with, Reiki, all those things. If you could stop that tape on that journey at a particular point that you really feel was the catalytic moment for you that kind of catapulted you onto this journey that you're now on, what was that moment for you?
Gosh, I think for me, it's kind of interesting. It's an evolution. Ever since I was a child, I had kind of a spiritual presence um, and worked my way up. But in the 80s, I was really excited about this thing called a computer. And so I'm like, I think that would be kind of fun to do. So I went to college and got a double major in computer science and engineering. But along the way, I graduated, went into IT, worked my way up over the years to become an executive. But the whole process, there was something like nagging, just like making me think about like, well, when are you going to do it, Chris? When are you going to do it? When is this going to happen? And it was like, eventually I'll get into, coaching or holistic life and really express from a holistic perspective, the mind, body, spirit connection. And finally, a few years ago, I'm not getting any younger. And it was, I've got to the top of the mountain in terms of, being an executive and, IT, everything, it was super exciting, but like, okay, now's the time. So really it was right around 2020 and COVID where it started like, all right, now's the deal. You could look at it, maybe it's a catalyst or what, but it was like at some point, like, let's take a look at this, reassess. What is your purpose in life? When are you going to get there? Now's the time. So that's kind of for me how it worked.
And it's interesting because, in reading your bio before we started today, I aforementioned all of these, NLP,
Mhm.
ministry, Reiki, coaching. If you could summarize those key components of the different things that you've done in your career, the one word that comes to mind for me is the word serve. You're serving people in different capacities, whether it's the
Yeah.
holistic life coaching, in the ministry work that you've done, even serving yourself, going and getting your PhD. That's a very selfless thing to do because there's a lot of people, myself included, you get that bachelor's degree and you're like, I don't want to look at school ever again. And, again, I didn't, all fairness, I've never worked for anyone. I was running a family business alongside of going to school, so I never used the bachelor's anyway, but I wanted to get it done. I wanted to finish what I started. So, what has it meant to you and for you to be in basically in a position your entire life, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
obviously you were meant for more, and you had a higher spiritual connection. How has it been for you in that fulfillment aspect, knowing that all these different paths that you've gone down have been around serving others and leaving them better after?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, at the end of the day, it is about serving for me. And even back in 2000, when I started my own business and started doing IT consulting, it was great. I loved to be independent. But after each project, each contract, and thing that I was doing, it was like, it was nice to have made some flavor of a difference. And then, pushing forward, and every time, working in IT, I eventually learned that I loved working with the people more than the computers. So, getting into architecture and executive level, it was much more rewarding. So, serving others, in my opinion, is also serving yourself. And we can touch on those, but like I always told my kids, there's no you without you. So like, take care of yourself, mind, body, spirit. Really understand who you are, and try to find a space within you that you know embodies love, and then that love will reflect back out to others.
Completely agree. You got to give in order to get, and what you're giving out is what you're going to get back.
Yeah.
So make sure it's something positive. So, as I mentioned this at the beginning of the episode, there's a lot of people that are familiar with life coaching, but may not be completely understanding what holistic life coaching is. So, could you share with the audience kind of the difference between the two, but also maybe some overlapping points between regular life coaching and holistic life coaching?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of confusion around the term holistic, holistic medicine or holistic living. But it really encompasses, from a holistic perspective, it's mind, body, and spirit. So when I started this journey years ago, very fascinated about the mind, hence, doing NLP or CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. Um, but like I've said earlier, I was a very spiritual person. So like, okay, it's something mind, spirit. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, the body, why is the body here? What's the value? I mean, you need a bag of bones, and you have a bag of stories, and then you have this purpose-driven life, which is the spiritual aspect. So I'm like, searching around trying to figure out what to do. And life coach just didn't seem enough for me, because a life coach is really focusing on your present moment. Maybe it digs in, using NLP or something into the past life experiences and things like that. But it's like trying to rotate your life as a life coach, asking tons of questions for your clients, and just, trying to get them the key thing. And really, my approach, from a coaching perspective, is very similar, though. The goal, like, I have lots of answers, but they're all my answers. So the goal for a coach is to ask the right questions, be engaged in listening, so that you can understand, um, getting them to the point where they are answering their own questions. That's the key. I think it's in the Lao Tzu once said, was basically the biggest sage is the one where he gets everything done that he believes in, but no one knows he did it. So from a holistic perspective, it's really focusing on mind, body, and spirit. That said, the executives and high achievers I work with, 90% of the time, it's in the mind. It's, between the ears.
Yeah, Wayne Dyer, um, rest in peace, always spoke very highly of Lao Tzu and the
Yeah.
connection between all of that. And my wife and I love his, he had a movie called The Shift, which you can watch
Mhm.
on YouTube. Great movie. So I think it's a very interesting thing that you're doing with I would say, holistic approach to life coaching. So let's dive into maybe some of the things that you do integrate with your specific life coaching aspect, because obviously holistic health integrated with obviously the practices and the things that you've learned as a life coach is a very, very unique thing. So just share with the audience a little bit about maybe some of the strategies, techniques, and ways that you do integrate all of that into one to really heighten the experience of the people that you work with.
Sure. We can dig in into the details. One of the things I like to start with is just to remind people, that life is like a three-legged stool: mind, body, and spirit. If one is out of balance with the other, that tends to have you fall off the fall off the chair. Um, but so one of the first steps is to just get into a position where you can recognize yourself. And some people will work on their body and do, like, mega exercising. Some will go off the spiritual deep end, and then some will focus on the mind. But for me, I start typically in the mind space, to just understand where the mindset is. And a lot of the clients I work with, they're call it monkey mind, but basically it's all raveled. They go into meetings and they don't know what decisions to make, and these people have 10, 20, 30, $50 million on the line. They're trying to trying to figure out what to do with. So, like, number one rule is, if you've got like a monkey mind and you're all stressed out, you most likely, at best, you'll guess at the right decision to make. So we want to take a moment, and the first step for me, it's mindful meditation. So the first thing that I like, and this is good for anyone, but really take a moment. And when they talk about meditation, they're like, oh, focus on an object and get rid of your thoughts. It's like, that's certainly one way to do it, but my approach is to say, find 5 minutes. Again, the clients I work with are very, very busy. I say, take 5 minutes and just watch your thoughts. Just start there and notice the thoughts coming and going. And eventually, don't get hung up on them. Let them go, which is a book I wrote, Letting Go Without Giving Up. But you let the thoughts come and you let them go. You even acknowledge them, the bad ones or the good ones, and just let that go. And then maybe the next day you can do 10 minutes, but continue that. And there's a point, kind of a trigger point, where you suddenly ask yourself, I'm seeing all these thoughts going by left and right. Who is actually watching those? So that's the point when you're starting to become aware. You're becoming aware of being aware, or the observer of your thoughts. And then you're like, wow, these thoughts that are triggering me and, getting me angry when someone cuts me off on the road. It's like, well, I am not that thought. And so now, and the key here is, we eventually will work through to the point where you're taking a look at your conscious and subconscious thoughts. Ultimately, triggers are something that's triggered immediately from the subconscious, and you literally don't have control over it. So by taking a step back, relaxing, doing breath work is another important one, and start to be aware that you are not your thoughts. And slowly, sometimes quickly, but those triggers will still show up, or those thoughts will still show up, but it's not immediate. You can react much better from that perspective. And then the last tip or technique for me is journaling as well. There's something about the connection between, I have a thought, this is what's going on in my head, writing it down physically in this world makes you think a little bit more about it, or reflect on it a little bit more. Plus, you can go back and take a look at those and track your progress on, how you're doing. So.
Great tips. My wife and I, not only do we practice mindfulness ourselves, we actually work with a lot of mindfulness teachers and coaches, helping them to share their gift and, grow their business online. So we've kind of learned a lot from them as well.
Mhm.
And every night before I go to bed, I journal. I've been doing that probably for the last 11 years. I practice gratitude. I write down some wins and things that I want to come into fruition. So I have a focal point. And it's really important to do that. So when we talk about, people in leadership positions, now just to clarify that, sometimes people are in leadership positions at a company they work for. So they might be managing a team or overseeing maybe a C-suite type position where they're on an executive team. But also, if you're a small business owner and you're leading a set of employees, or it can even be a solopreneur, where you're leading yourself. You're literally,
Mhm.
you're everything. You're the COO, the CO, the CFO, the CMO, all the different O's. So how how can someone that is really struggling with certain aspects, because for me, clarity is key. Not just
Mhm.
mental clarity, but clarity on my goals, things I want to achieve. But as you kind of alluded to, sometimes the emotional eruption of certain situations can derail our
Mhm.
focus on what we're looking to do. So do you have any strategies or tips for those leaders that are listening to this, that when those emotional situations do bubble to the surface and they're really struggling to grasp that mental clarity required to really push the needle forward, what do you suggest them to do in those moments and in those situations?
Yeah, again, I think there's a couple of ways you can look at it, but from my perspective, you can get into situations whether you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur, or you're at a $4 billion company. But in the moment you're in there, say it's a meeting, say you're working with someone, what I say is, I mean, that's probably not the best time to work on your mindfulness. You're going to do what you're going to do, and I would argue too, the way you feel is vital to your existence. You're feeling a way for a reason, and then for some of us that want to kind of go a step beyond, when we see some of our emotions or our thoughts are negative and we're like, huh, I don't like that version of myself. Well, the reality is you are who you are, all the thoughts, the good thoughts and the bad thoughts. So you need to take a step back outside of the meeting or outside of when you're doing a reflection. So that's one of the biggest tips, is like, you're going to do what you're going to do. You have to do it. You're going to get angry at someone. You're going to be stressed out. But doing it in the moment is very, very difficult. You might end up with an epiphany, um, and find joy and love in your heart. But that's usually done behind closed doors, trying to figure it out in the morning or in the evening. So that's one of the things that, otherwise, the other things I look at too, when the way I look at life too, with a business or you're running a business, you're doing this for others, kind of like we talked, you're serving others for this. And so I look at it as a communion aspect. So you're communion, or communicating with others, and that is the biggest and greatest gift, is relationships. You're not, no man is an island, and so you want to, ultimately your path should be to communicate and get into positive, loving relationships. So you might be in a meeting and you just know there's this one person that is just has been bugging you, and I don't care what he says, it's the wrong answer. But you can just reflect and go, okay, I'm plan. The other key trick is, before the meeting, before you're getting into the situation, try to be more proactive than reactive. you know Tell yourself, I'm going to go into the meeting, I'm going to have this conversation on the phone call, and this is how I'm going to act. The visualization is huge, and to play and replay. I've done this my whole life, and I didn't realize what I was doing early on. But you go through the process, and a lot of people will focus on worst case scenarios. But I think it's important to kind of look at that. It's like, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, yeah, you lose the deal, you lose your company. I mean, it's like, but again, think about, there's no you without you. I mean, the path and journey that you have along your life, you don't know where it's going. The important thing is to find your passion and run with it.
It's almost like when a coach and a coaching staff is planning ahead in the NFL. They look at the schedule of the teams that they're playing. They sit in those rooms behind closed doors and they go over scenarios. They go over situations, right? Where could the wheels fall off? Or, where in previous games do we need to improve so when we're in that situation, we're handling it the right way. And I think, to your point, that's a great example, just because, yes, everyone has triggers, whether
Mhm.
it's an individual or a certain situation. When you can get in front of it, it's less likely to become a trigger moving forward. So I take my health and wellness very, very seriously. I spent uh, nearly 20 years in the health and wellness industry. I had 3 fitness clubs. I did competitive bodybuilding. I still do bench press contests now alongside my father. I was a personal trainer, sports nutritionist, corporate wellness speaker. I mean, I still do some of that, but for just myself personally, left the industry in 2016. But I know, and you can ask any high performer, what is one of their most key things that they always make time for, and it's their health and wellness, eating healthy, being active, going to the gym, and that folds into so many different things about having that balance between mind, body, soul, spirit, all those things to have a harmonious balance, not just from a professional side of our lives, but a personal side of our lives. So talk to the audience as we start to wind down about that interpersonal connection of mind, body, soul, but really taking care of you, because if you're not at your optimal performance level, not only will your professional life suffer, but your personal life will suffer as well.
Yep, exactly. No, to me, it's all about suffering. And when you're out of balance with your mind, body, and spirit, um, I would say bad things happen, but again, everything happens for a reason. Everything that you go through is a learning point, something to learn from. So, from a mind, body, spirit perspective, understand where you're coming from. Take a moment to try and reflect upon, what where you're at, and don't go off the deep end in one way or the other too. So it really is about balancing. You're here. A complete package is thinking about all three of those. And for high achievers and individuals in life, they want to fit. They want to get their body, perfect, and then they don't really think about the mind. And it goes both ways, like I said, and ultimately, usually you fix your body and then you fix your mind and then you fix your spirit. So there's a path or a journey for a lot of people. Most of them only unfortunately get to the mind part. Now, one of the things I joke about too is um, super critical to become aware, like we talked earlier about being aware of your thoughts like that. Until you reach that point, I always think of a lot of us are just zombies on parade. I mean, when you're really not thinking about what you're doing, and people talk about forgetting where they put their keys. Well, I guarantee you, when you put your keys down somewhere, your mind was in the past or the future somewhere else. So that's why you don't remember where those things are. And again, the last thing too to think about is most individuals fear the past. They think too much about the past, and then that creates self-doubt and unworthiness. And then high achievers tend to spend most of their time in the future, worrying about and stressing and anything like that. Again, at the end of the day, you have to remove yourself from the past or the future and try to become your true self, your authentic self in the present moment. And it's very interesting things that happen. They talk about synchronicity and whatnot, but very interesting things happen to you when you can remain in the present moment. And honestly, you know, your intuition or your intentions start to actually become fruitful. So it's a little bit difficult. I hate to tell people working hard will only get you so far, but working smart and reflecting on your work-life balance, because again, it's great to have a career, but it's good to have something other than that outside there. And you're going to be, they talk a lot too about like being on your deathbed and what are you going to reflect on? Nobody looks back at their career. They look at back on their relationships and how much love they gave to others. I mean, at the, so, and that's another practice that you can have. It's kind of morbid, but contemplate on your eulogy.
And the things that you wish you did that you never got a chance to while you were here.
Exactly.
Yeah, I always go back to the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and
Yep.
great book. It's like it should be required reading by any human being. Because and it's not too woo woo. I mean, he's very straightforward because to your
Yeah.
point, he talks about the 3 different types of people out there. He said there's people that are constantly in worry and stress. And those are the people that are always thinking about the future, the things that haven't happened yet. And then you have the people that are in anxiety because they're thinking about the past and the things that
Hmm.
maybe could happen again. But then
Hmm.
you have the people that live in peace. And those
Yeah.
are the people that are just focusing on the only time, and this is a fact, the only time that you can actually control is the present moment. You can't
Yep.
do anything about the past because it's already behind you, and you can't do
Yep.
anything about the future because it hasn't happened yet.
Yep.
So, and I know that's a very elementary way to state it, but it is a simple thing. But to your point, it takes practice.
Well, and I think that's exactly right, and that's why I focus almost entirely on the mindset portion of it, because that's where everyone's stuck. And without getting too woo woo, but I mean the reality is there is only the present moment. The past and the future aren't necessarily, they're an illusion. Everything is happening. There was that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once or whatever,
Great
fantastic
movie.
movie, but that's literally what is happening. So every opportunity you have, once you're aware and conscious of what you're doing, the only thing left is to make choices in the present moment. And once you get to that point, like I said, great things start to happen.
So, as before I get to my final question, for that person that really resonated with the message today, tell the audience a little bit about what it's like to work with you, how you work with people, but more importantly, if they are interested in taking that next step and speaking to you further, where's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, I think the one thing is on my website, knowledgegain.com. Um, that's where you could reach me or reach out to me. Otherwise, on LinkedIn, I'm CS Larsen 42. But on my website, I've got some programs, free consultation on the first one. There's also an ebook, Holistic Transformation Guide to Mastering Executive Wellness. It's a free ebook. And if you download it and hopefully read it, you get 20% off my program as well. So, but that's a great place. There's also a contact, just reach out to me from there if you just have a question about anything. But happy to help any way I can. And like I said, this is this is you talk about requiring people to read Eckhart Tolle's book, and I'm like, we're getting to a point where this mental health crisis that we're in, uh, a lot of it is solved by just thinking about what you're thinking and restructuring how you live your life. And I think we're at a tipping point now over the next couple of years. The things that I do and other coaches do are going to be more and more critical. So again, don't no man is an island. Don't go ahead and try it on your own. But ultimately, it's hard to fix the mind with the mind. So it's always good to have someone to bounce ideas off.
And all of this is going to become more mainstream the more people get on board with it, because I think anything in life starts as taboo or kind of unnormed,
Hmm.
but the more people do it, practice it, and obviously put it into play, it does become more normalized, which I hope it does. And I completely agree. The mental health crisis, is becoming a dire thing, and just reframing certain aspects of your thoughts and being proactive instead of reactive,
Hmm.
obviously will change a lot of that. So, Chris, before we close out today, one final question before we sign off. What does success truly mean to you?
Boy, success. I mean, for me, it's being your true authentic self. I mean, success will you will make decisions in your life and go forward, and you will fail many times in many areas, but ultimately they're all guideposts or journeys for you along your way through life. And so to be successful ultimately is to be engaged and passionate about what you do. And when you fail, get up the next day and start again. And just spend some time and reflecting on how amazing life can be when you're being your authentic self.
Love that. Could not agree more. And Chris, just wanted to thank you again for taking the time out of your day to be here with my audience and share all your wisdom, your knowledge, and all the things that they can do to better their life personally and professionally. And just really appreciate you being here with me today.
I appreciate it too. Thanks, Scott.
Absolutely. So again, for all the listeners, all the people watching, All the information about how to connect with Chris will be in the show notes, the description of this episode, and obviously the email that gets broadcasted out so you guys can listen. So we want to hear back from you. What were your biggest takeaways? What were the things that moved the needle most for you? So everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Love and gratitude, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you could, please support this podcast by hopping over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any place that you're listening to this. Leave us a rating and review. Let us know what you loved most and what you would like to hear more of. But also, if you would like to learn how to take your business to the next level, whether it's using LinkedIn or working directly with myself and Nancy in our intimate group coaching programs, you can head over to www.thetimetogrow.com or scottaaron.net to learn more. Thank you again for your support, love, and gratitude, and I'll talk to you soon.